Hey everyone! You know there are plenty of RPGs that need to come back, and instead of remastering and remaking an already accessible game, I believe we should take a look back at those gems, so everybody can enjoy them once again. If you're interested in the previous video, I'll leave the link in the description. But let me ask you, if you had a chance to see other remakes down the line, which ones would you recommend? Without further ado, let's begin. With a new Fire Emblem in the horizon, I believe the hype was already noticed. Yep, plenty of us wanna play it, but if I am honest, bringing some forgotten entries would be equally interesting. In this case, Path of Radiance would be a cool step into that direction, considering that this game had but few copies that go for around $250 to $300 nowadays. Now, that is one of the main reasons to bring Soen no Kiseki. But another is that this Fire Emblem story was quite amazing, following high development, as his story starts kinda slow, but ultimately delivers a fascinating tale. Now on this front I believe plenty of maps could be reworked to be much more entertaining, rather than something annoying. Maybe they could add some quality of life improvements, as in the last Fire Emblem entries, plus all the cool animations. So yeah, I believe this game could be an extraordinary remake, of course while keeping all its cool narrative, and perhaps expanding some horizons. Plus, if it were possible to add Radiant Dawn into the mix, that would be terrific, but who knows, I haven't heard any other plans of bringing other old entries. Next, I would like to see Phantasy Star 4. If I am honest, it would be cool to have all of them. But well, let's say that we need a kind of summary able to bring the millenniums together, and then Phantasy Star 4. These Sega games were kind of obscure. In any case, here we follow a couple of hunters with a classic objective, where they have to save their world. It also has a classic underdog story where Chaz will have to grow a lot to finish this crusade. Aside from that, I will say, you have to check the tale. It was quite good, as it had creative ideas, where it feels like you're reading a manga or something like that. Now the deal with this game is that the years definitely feel once you play it nowadays, as it takes some classic DRPG ideas, so I believe this game could have a nice polish for everyone to dive into its amazing experience once again. Then Breath of Fire. This is one of those games that are liked by many. And yeah, it was nice when Capcom assigned some of the best from their team to create this entry. While it is an interesting tale, let's face it, there were not these ideas back then. It is like its long intro pretty much told you what is going on, so part of the magic was lost in that process. But let's face it, those were different times, so I believe some tweaks here and there will do wonders in this narrative, considering that it was kinda bare bones in some ends. And being a game from Capcom, who knows, it may be a superb JRPG able to refresh its experience, as Final Fantasy VII did, with some 3D action. Considering that Capcom has a good group of devs on that front, just don't make another clunky Monster Hunter. And if that is too much and people just want to experience once again what was thrown back in the day, some 2D HD will do wonders, as this was a quite interesting journey with creative ideas, especially cast of characters and cities. I believe those details still have a lot of potential nowadays. The following RPG is more on a whim, so Shining in the Darkness. Yep, the DRPG that was confused as an SRPG because of Shining Force entries. How it happened? Oh, be my guest about those years. Okay, Shining in the Darkness takes place in the kingdom of Thornwood, where Princess Jess wants to visit a shrine. However, she has to go with the most loyal knight of the kingdom, Mordred. For some reason they thought it was a good idea to get near the labyrinth, and what can I say? Oh great hero, please save my daughter, and your dad please. As plenty of DRPGs, this is a tricky request, considering they are old school in nature. Now to be honest, I would like to keep that same idea intact, but adding some extra layers to its experience, with secondary classes and stuff like that. Let's say something like Saviors of Sapphire Wings, where you have a class and a subclass, or being able to swap between some things left and right. And yep, its gameplay is the one that needs the most work. because Shining in the Darkness has an amazing art, worth checking out nowadays. Sure, while on the first areas it is like, okay, it is good. But the deeper you go, the better it gets, to a point where it is simply gorgeous. With the Switch 2 in our hands, and some 3D remakes around the corner, a game I would like to play once again is Shin Megami Tensei 4. Yep, not Apocalypse. Don't get me wrong, it was cool, but I believe the original is much better, aside from the subquest hell you have to go through. Of course, reimagining Shin Megami Tensei 4 isn't that complicated, considering Atlus has the engine they used to make Metaphor. Worst case scenario, because of budgets and speculations, I believe it can look like SMT5 and I would be happy. Now, this is a good opportunity to reduce some of the subquests because some were kinda annoying. For example, there was one where you had to explore an area that was mixed between hazardous floors and tricky environment, and having to take some dumb photos in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, that kind of things are the ones that could receive a good polish, as its general tale and gameplay were simply great. The same as its music, it was simply extraordinary. So yeah, I see good potential to having this game down the line. Just do not make a crappy keycard, please. That is all I ask. Coming back with the classics, The Legend of Dragoon. With all due respect, but this JRPG has aged as spoiled milk. Yeah, back in the day I believe it had interesting ideas. Gameplay where you had to press buttons in the right moment, turning the experience into something fresh, considering most RPGs back in the day were your usual use a command. And I still consider it has beautiful cinematics. Now, don't get me wrong, it was a cool journey that, with the right direction in its story, I believe it could come back as one of the best, where the second and third CDs had their hiccups, but that is something that can be fixed. Okay, the thing is that if you try to play it nowadays, the experience feels a bit stagnant and forced, going through endless zigzags where you have random encounters every now and then, plus having to go through the same hell after beating a boss. Perhaps patience is something I am losing, I won't deny that. But for me, those are good reasons to bring this game back, as I consider it has great potential. Everything is going to depend from its level of exploration, and if they want to properly set chapters or side quests for your characters and the main story. Ys 5, Lost Kevin, Kingdom of Sand, is one of those Ys games that we have to play through legitimate ways, considering it never left Japan. As usual, we follow Adol Christine after his adventures in Felghana. Alone, Adol reaches Sandria, place where he's known because of previous events. Thus, he gets in contact with a merchant that sends him to find some legendary crystals, and this is pretty much how we start to take some inertia in this game. Okay, this entry didn't sit that well in comparison to other Ys games. It may not be the worst, but it is an oddball. Sure, it is definitely that, because seems like Falcom doesn't even look at it. So no idea if this or Ys Seeds will actually get a remake or a remaster in the future, but if I had a chance to choose, I would like to see this one as the latest installment. Fortunately, its gameplay isn't as horrendous as some people say, at least if you played some action RPGs back in the day. The thing here is that its platforming can be annoying and frustrating in multiple areas, because the terrain can be tricky, especially if you have to go through narrow corridors, while securing jumps and stuff like that. Now, something that has to be fixed in this game is its pace, because in comparison to other Ys games, this one is slow as heck, and it had balance issues, reason why it was released time later. But what can I say? Those are good enough reasons to want to see a well-secured remake of Ys 5. Another DRPG I would like to see once again is The Dark Spire. Now, this entry may not sit that well if you compare it with Eterna Odyssey. This one follows a closer line to what was Wizardry. Yep, I prefer to keep its story aside, as it is more about narrative and other events, which in a sense is fine as you don't get lost in the sea of translations. The main reason to play this game was to dive into the dungeon, steal yourself, and start to move forward. And while I would encourage people to play the original DS release, the fact is that there are certain things that haven't aged that well. I don't know under which circumstances it was decided, but Choosing equipment through pure text is kinda wild, at least to me, and that is one of the things I would improve, the same as its character progression, considering that these games have as main purpose the want to explore and reach harder challenges. If I had the chance to choose a kind of setting, or close to another JRPG idea, I would say that a Stranger of Sword City level of complexity would do wonders with a game of this caliber. JRPG where you have to cross-train multiple times to get a specific skill to make interesting builds, depending from the task you wanna give to your units. Another nice thing would be to get a remake of its music. I mean, the original one is amazing, but I still consider it can go some steps above, similarly as Ethereum Odyssey Untold releases. In the next entry, I will throw Golden Sun. Needless to say how it would be cool to have the Lost Age together, considering that the story can be packed in a nice and tidy way. Now, Golden Sun is your turn-based RPG that uses some of the most classic ideas in the genre, plus some little creatures known as the Jinns, having to fight some while others join your cause without that much of an issue. Okay, what makes this game stand out the most is the kind of puzzles that it threw at every corner, being quite interactive and entertaining, as you had to do some jumping, use of synergies, and stuff like that to advance through the whole journey. On this front, I believe a 2D HD release would do wonders. However, if I am honest, I would add some other things in its turn-based system to spice things up. I mean, the original adventure was amazing all those years back, but you know, after playing plenty of classic turn-based RPGs, they have to throw something slightly new. Or at least that would be my opinion, if they want to excite the whole community once again. Perhaps I am wrong, but that is my opinion. And last but not least, another entry on a whim. Septerra Core. Yep, the Western RPG trying to stand close to Final Fantasy. It is ironic, but plenty of games back in those days had their eyes set on Final Fantasy VII, and Septerra Core was no exception. Now, this is not the first time I talk about this game, and the reason why I bring it here is because, similarly as other entries in this list, it hasn't aged that well, particularly the whole backtrack you have to do while exploring a dungeon, having to go back and forth if you didn't have the right characters, which inevitably turns the experience stagnant after committing the same mistake in multiple times. And similarly as the 6th entry in the video, the random encounters were a test of patience. However, here there is another issue, being really slow, as you have to see plenty of little animations every time you're attacked, which unfortunately turns the whole experience into a nightmare in the long run. I know plenty of devs use encounters and tricky dungeons to increase the gameplay, but by addressing those two things, I generally could say that this game could stand close to the big JRPGs from back then, as its story was already quite good and original. However, its gameplay, at least nowadays, is something I couldn't recommend at all. I hope you found this video entertaining. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.